The stories of the saints are like guiding lights, illuminating the path for every Catholic looking to deepen their faith, find courage, and feel a closer connection to God's Word. Over centuries, these remarkable figures have embodied virtues that resonate through Scripture and the teachings of the Church. They stand as symbols of courage, wisdom, faith, and self-sacrifice. Their lives weren't easy, far from it. Many faced trials and challenges that would test even the strongest spirit. Yet each saint accepted a mission that reflects Christ's teachings, leaving a legacy that inspires souls across generations. Today we're diving into the lives of 10 extraordinary saints every Catholic should know. Saints who didn't just walk the path of righteousness, they reshaped it, creating a lasting impact for all who followed. Why do these saints matter so much? At the heart of it, they show us a path to a deeper, more personal relationship with God. From the unyielding bravery of Saint Joan of Arc to the heavenly guardianship of Saint Michael the Archangel, each saint brings a unique quality of holiness that speaks directly to our own lives. They were, after all, ordinary people who responded to God's call in extraordinary ways. Their lives are full of lessons in humility, perseverance, compassion, and unwavering faith. We won't just recount their stories, we'll connect them to biblical virtues, so you can see how their journeys reflect the values we hold dear as Catholics. Before we continue these incredible stories, consider subscribing to our channel. By joining us, you won't miss any of our biblical reflections or discussions on faith, all designed to bring you closer to the core of Bible teachings. When you subscribe, you become part of a community seeking wisdom and truth, inspired by the lives of these saints and the Scripture that guides them. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Let's take this journey together. The saints we're about to meet aren't just historical figures. They're living reminders that holiness can show up in every part of life. Take Saint Francis of Assisi, who found God's love in every creature around him, or Saint Thomas Aquinas, who explored divine truth through his profound insights into theology. And of course, Saint Mary the Virgin, who stands at the heart of our faith, showing through her obedience and humility the purest form of saying yes to God. Through these saints, we glimpse the beauty of a life given fully to God's purpose, how that kind of surrender can transform not only the person, but also the world around them. Now let's begin with our first saint, the mighty protector and heavenly warrior, Saint Michael the Archangel. Saint Michael the Archangel isn't just a character in Christian lore. He's a towering figure of strength, protection, and unwavering faith, leading heaven's armies against the forces of darkness. His very name, who is like God, is a rhetorical question that has echoed through the ages, serving as a powerful reminder of God's unmatched greatness. In Scripture, Michael is portrayed as the ultimate warrior, one who bravely engages in a spiritual battle that spans all of time and space. He appears in the Bible multiple times, each mention reinforcing his loyalty to God and his mission to guard the souls of humanity. One of the most vivid depictions of Saint Michael's role comes from the book of Revelation. Here, Michael leads his angels in a celestial showdown against Satan and his followers, casting them out of heaven. Revelation 12, verse 7-9 reads, "Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven." This passage doesn't just show us the reality of spiritual warfare. It reveals Michael's strength and authority as God's champion. It's a powerful scene that reminds us of the ongoing struggle between good and evil, a battle we face in our own lives with Michael as our defender. But Michael's role isn't limited to the heavenly realms. In the book of Daniel, he's described as the great prince who protects God's people, acting as a guardian angel who intervenes on Israel's behalf during difficult times. In Daniel 10:13 and 12:1, we see Michael stepping in when his people need him most. This aspect of his mission, his role as protector, offers a deep sense of comfort. It shows us that Michael's purpose isn't only to battle Satan, he's also here to guard humanity, especially during times of struggle. When we call upon Michael, we're reaching out to a powerful warrior whose love for God compels him to stand with us in our own battles, offering guidance and shielding us from unseen threats. The Church has long recognized St. Michael's significance, weaving his presence into its prayers and traditions. In 1886, Pope Leo XIII introduced the prayer to St. Michael after reportedly having a vision of demonic forces threatening the world. In response, this prayer was crafted as a call for Michael's intercession and protection. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. Today, Catholics around the world recite this prayer, seeking courage, purity, and protection from all forms of evil. It's a reminder that we're not alone in our spiritual struggles. We have a heavenly advocate fighting alongside us. Seeing Michael as a warrior might make him feel distant, perhaps even unreachable in his celestial duties. But to many, he's incredibly personal. Catholics turn to Michael for strength when they're afraid, for courage when they feel weak, and for protection against spiritual harm. His very nature becomes a source of strength for those in need, and his intercession has been a lifeline for countless people feeling vulnerable to life's challenges. Reflecting on Michael, we're reminded that our own battles, whether they're against temptation, doubt, or despair, don't have to be fought alone. Interestingly, Michael's role isn't just about defeating evil. He's also a model of humility. Despite his power and position, Michael submits completely to God's will, understanding that his strength isn't his own, but comes from God. This humility teaches us that real strength doesn't come from self-importance, but from obedience to God's plan. Michael's battle cry, "Who is like God?" is a call to remember our place before the Creator, to stand in awe of God's majesty, and to humbly surrender to His will. It's a virtue that's as relevant to us today as it was in ages past, reminding us that our true strength lies in relying on God, not just on ourselves. For centuries, artists have been fascinated by St. Michael, often depicting him with a sword in hand and his foot planted firmly on the defeated serpent. This imagery isn't just striking. It's deeply symbolic. It serves as a reminder of the ultimate promise that good will prevail over evil, a reassurance that even when we feel overwhelmed, there's a divine force fighting for us. Statues and icons of St. Michael are common in Catholic homes, placed as visible reminders of his protection and as silent encouragement to live with courage and integrity. In today's world, the call to invoke St. Michael's protection feels as relevant as ever. We live in a time where both physical and spiritual dangers seem ever present, and many people seek comfort and strength in his quiet power. His presence reassures us that no matter how intense our personal or spiritual struggles may be, we have a powerful ally watching over us, guiding us and guarding us along our journey. St. Michael stands as a timeless symbol of faith and divine protection, a figure who, even today, is as close as a prayer. As we move on to learn about the next saint, St. Christopher, the patron saint of travelers, let's carry in our hearts the courage and humility that St. Michael embodies. His strength encourages us to face our fears with resolve, while his humility invites us to surrender to God's purpose. In St. Michael, we find both a protector and a role model, someone who inspires us to approach our own battles with courage and to live in service of something greater than ourselves. St. Christopher stands among the most cherished saints in Catholic tradition, known far and wide not only as the patron saint of travelers, but also as a symbol of how faith can help us carry life's heaviest burdens. His story, though often surrounded by legend, is a powerful lesson in humility, strength, and the courage to bear even the hardest challenges with grace. Tradition tells us that Christopher was a man of great physical strength, a towering figure who once served a king. But his true greatness didn't emerge until he began seeking a purpose beyond his strength, a purpose that would eventually lead him to encounter Christ himself. According to legend, Christopher's spiritual journey began when he decided he wanted to serve the greatest king in the world. He first served a human king, only to learn that this king feared the devil. Thinking the devil must be even more powerful, Christopher sought him out, only to find that even the devil feared the symbol of the cross. This realization led Christopher to Christianity, as he came to understand that Christ was the ultimate source of strength and truth. From that point on, he dedicated himself to serving Christ, vowing to help others along their journeys as an act of devotion. In this way, his calling shifted from wielding his power to humbling himself in service to others. The most famous story of Saint Christopher recounts a night when he was helping people cross a dangerous river. One day, a small child approached him, asking for help to cross. Thinking it a simple task, Christopher lifted the child onto his shoulders and began wading through the water. But as he crossed, the child grew heavier and heavier, until it felt as though Christopher was carrying the entire world on his shoulders. Struggling under the immense weight, he finally reached the other side, only to discover that the child was none other than Christ himself. The child revealed to him, "You have not only carried the world but also He who made it." This powerful moment captures the essence of Saint Christopher's mission, bearing the weight of the world out of love for God, even when the journey becomes almost too much to bear. For many Catholics, Saint Christopher is a reminder that our journeys are never truly solitary. The river he crossed represents the turbulent waters of life, and his strength is a testament to how faith can sustain us through even the toughest moments. His story shows us that true strength doesn't come from resisting our burdens, but from carrying them with grace, trusting that Christ is by our side, especially when we feel overwhelmed. Just as Christopher struggled with the weight of the child, we too may feel crushed by life's trials. Yet the faith that allows us to bear those burdens turns them into acts of love and devotion. Saint Christopher's legacy endures in the countless people who seek his protection each day, especially travelers. Many carry medallions of Saint Christopher as a token of his guardianship, a custom that's lasted through the centuries. Whether traveling in the physical or spiritual sense, his intercession is invoked as a blessing for safe passage, a tradition that highlights the comfort and courage we can draw from his story. The popular prayer, "Saint Christopher, protect us as we travel along the road of life," captures the hope that his spirit of endurance will guide and guard us. For every journey, for every new road we embark on, his story reminds us that we walk not alone, but under divine protection. Christopher's journey also speaks to the theme of transformation. Originally a man of great physical power, he discovered that his true strength lay in surrendering to God's will rather than relying solely on his own abilities. His life embodies the biblical teaching that strength is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. For Christopher, his weakness wasn't physical, but spiritual. He needed a purpose, a mission that went beyond himself. When he carried the child across the river, he was transformed from a man seeking greatness into a servant of divine purpose. This simple act of service became a profound metaphor for how faith can redefine our strengths and redirect our lives. In today's world, where we're constantly moving, seeking purpose amid the chaos, St. Christopher's story feels as relevant as ever. We all face rivers to cross, challenges that seem insurmountable, and burdens that grow heavier with each step. St. Christopher's life reminds us that we aren't meant to face these alone. He teaches us that in accepting Christ's presence along our journey, we find the strength to push forward. When we carry others with love and humility, as he carried the Christ child, we discover a sense of purpose and peace, even in the weightiest of burdens. For those who feel crushed by life's challenges, invoking St. Christopher can bring reassurance that they too will find a way across the rivers in their lives. His story assures us that even when we can't see it, we are never truly alone. God is right there with us. Every time we reach out to help someone else bear their burdens, we draw closer to that divine love. St. Christopher reminds us that the path to holiness often lies not in our own achievements, but in our willingness to lift others along the way. As we move on to our next saint, St. Jude, the patron of hopeless causes, let's carry with us the lesson of St. Christopher. In every journey, through every burden, we are being shaped and guided, just as he was. St. Christopher's faith transformed him from a man of sheer physical power into a symbol of spiritual resilience. May his example inspire us to seek our strength not in our own abilities, but in our faith and our willingness to help others shoulder their burdens. St. Jude, often referred to as the patron saint of hopeless causes, holds a unique place in the Catholic heart, a beacon of hope for those facing life's darkest trials. Known as Thaddeus in the Gospels, Jude was one of the 12 apostles chosen by Jesus, a loyal follower who lived in the shadow of his Savior, witnessing firsthand the miracles and teachings that would change the world. Yet St. Jude's life and legacy go beyond his apostleship. His lasting influence lies in his profound compassion for those in despair, the people who feel they have nowhere else to turn. St. Jude's very name has become synonymous with faith against all odds, a reminder that God's mercy extends to every corner of human suffering. The reverence for St. Jude as the patron of desperate situations likely stems from the immense challenges he faced as he spread Christ's teachings after the resurrection. According to tradition, St. Jude traveled far and wide to share the good news, enduring countless hardships and hostility. But Jude never gave up, even when confronted with overwhelming obstacles. This resilience has led countless people to look to him in their own struggles, finding in him a fellow sufferer who understands their pain and a saint who offers hope through his intercession. His life echoes the promise in Matthew 19, verse 26, "With God, all things are possible," a belief that has fortified millions of believers who turn to him when hope seems distant. For many, prayers to St. Jude are born from desperate circumstances: a loved one facing a terminal illness, a family member in deep distress, or a personal struggle that feels insurmountable. People pray to St. Jude because they know that, through him, God hears their cries. When one has exhausted every other option, St. Jude stands ready to receive their prayers and carry them to God, offering an avenue of grace when all else has failed. His intercession is not about guaranteeing miracles, but about restoring the strength and faith needed to endure, reminding believers that they are not alone in their suffering. For countless Catholics, the very act of praying to St. Jude becomes a moment of connection with God, a spiritual embrace that brings comfort and peace. The devotion to St. Jude extends beyond words and prayers. It is a profound faith experience. Churches dedicated to St. Jude are filled with plaques, letters, and tokens of gratitude from people whose prayers he has answered. These testimonies are reminders that faith can thrive even in the bleakest circumstances, that hope, no matter how small, can be reignited through the simplest act of true saint. As we turn to St. Jude, we're invited to lay down our burdens, allowing ourselves to be lifted up by a saint who walks with those in despair. In his gentle compassion, he reflects Christ's love for the downtrodden, the lost, and the weary. Now, as we shift from the patron of hopeless causes to the patron saint of lost items, let us reflect on how these two saints remind us that nothing is ever truly lost. Not hope, not faith, and certainly not God's love. Saint Anthony of Padua is one of the most cherished saints in the Catholic Church. Known widely as the patron saint of lost items, his legacy extends far beyond this single role. His life was one of profound dedication to God, marked by humility, deep scholarship, and a passionate desire to bring others closer to Christ. Born in Lisbon, Portugal, and later joining the Franciscan order, Anthony committed himself wholeheartedly to preaching and teaching the gospel. His influence spread rapidly, not just because of his knowledge, but because he had a rare gift for making complex spiritual truths accessible and understandable. His words touched even the hardest of hearts, and in many ways his life became a testament to how simple faith can create profound transformations. The origin of Anthony's reputation as the saint who helps people find lost things comes from stories of his miracles, including one where he prayed fervently for a lost prayer book. Miraculously, the book was returned to him, a seemingly small event that sparked his legacy as the saint who intercedes for lost possessions. But St. Anthony's reach goes beyond helping with misplaced items. He is also known for guiding those who feel spiritually lost, helping people find their way back to faith. His prayers are often invoked by those searching for direction in life, seeking clarity in times of confusion, or yearning to reconnect with God. St. Anthony's life reminds us that God cares deeply about even the smallest details of our lives, a message that brings comfort to anyone feeling unseen or unheard. Anthony's talent for preaching earned him the title Hammer of Heretics because he could articulate the faith so clearly and powerfully that it dispelled doubt and led people to a deeper understanding of God. This wasn't just a skill but a divine gift, grounded in his profound humility and love for truth. His sermons were rich with insights that bridged the gap between human weakness and God's boundless grace. When Anthony spoke, he didn't merely convey knowledge. He offered his listeners a glimpse into God's compassion, inviting them to a fuller, more faithful life. Even today, his teachings continue to inspire Catholics worldwide, illuminating paths that might have once seemed unclear or blocked. But perhaps one of the most beautiful aspects of St. Anthony's life was his kindness and compassion. He understood the fragility of the human spirit, knowing that people often feel lost, unworthy, or overwhelmed, and he treated everyone he encountered with gentleness and mercy. Stories tell of people flocking to him, not only to hear his sermons, but to experience the warmth of his presence. Anthony embodied Christ's message of love, and his intercession has become a source of solace for millions who feel abandoned or adrift. His life is a reminder that in Christ we are never truly lost, no matter how far we may have wandered. In turning to St. Anthony, Catholics find not only a helper in their time of need, but a friend in the faith, a saint who walks with them through life's many searches, whether for a lost set of keys or a renewed sense of purpose. His legacy is an invitation to seek God in all things, to believe that what is lost can always be found with faith, and to trust that every search, no matter how small, brings us one step closer to God. As we move on to our next saint, St. Joseph, let's hold on to the comfort St. Anthony offers to those who feel lost. His prayers continue to guide us in both our smallest needs and our deepest longings, reminding us that we are always watched over and never truly alone. St. Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus and husband of Mary, holds a deeply revered place in Catholic devotion. He stands as a model of humility, strength, and steadfast faith. In the Gospels, St. Joseph's role may seem quiet and understated, but his actions speak volumes about his character and his love for God. Entrusted with the care of the Holy Family, he took on the role of protector for both the Son of God and the Virgin Mary, a responsibility that required unimaginable trust in God, resilience in the face of uncertainty, and a profound love that would shape not only the life of Jesus but also the future of the Church. In St. Joseph, we find a powerful example of faithful obedience, showing us that true greatness lies not in public recognition, but in the silent dedication to one's divine calling. The Gospels don't record many of St. Joseph's words, but his actions reveal the depth of his heart. When he learned that Mary was expecting a child before they were married, he quietly planned to divorce her, hoping to spare her any shame. Yet, when an angel appeared to him in a dream, revealing that Mary's child was conceived by the Holy Spirit, he didn't hesitate. Joseph accepted Mary and her unborn child, embracing a role he may not have fully understood, but was willing to fulfill out of obedience to God. This moment of surrender gives us a rare glimpse into the character of St. Joseph, a man who places God's will above his own plans, trusting completely in a purpose he could barely grasp, but was ready to embrace wholeheartedly. Joseph's journey was anything but easy. Soon after Jesus was born, he was warned in another dream to flee to Egypt to protect his son from King Herod's murderous intent. Imagine the weight of that responsibility. A simple carpenter, suddenly called to guide his family on a dangerous journey to a foreign land, carrying in his arms the child who would bring salvation to the world. St. Joseph's courage in that moment is awe-inspiring. He left behind his home, his work, and everything familiar to protect the Christ child. In doing so, he became the very definition of a protector, a role model for every parent, guardian, and faithful servant. His actions teach us that love is often shown not through words, but through quiet sacrifice and steady presence. Through St. Joseph's life, we see a deep connection to God's silent strength. His humility teaches us that God's love often shines brightest in the background, in the quiet and humble acts of service. As a carpenter, Joseph worked with his hands, providing for his family and teaching Jesus the value of honest labor and humility. Imagine the quiet scenes in their modest home. Joseph showing young Jesus how to shape wood, imparting lessons not through grand speeches, but through the simple, steady acts of daily life. These small, ordinary moments remind us that holiness is found not only in grand gestures, but in the everyday tasks of life, in the humble duties of a father and a husband. For many, Saint Joseph has become a source of strength and intercession in times of hardship. He is often called upon by those seeking employment, stability, or guidance through difficult times. His example serves as a reminder that God provides, even when the path is unclear. His quiet trust in God's plan speaks to anyone who feels overlooked or burdened, reassuring them that faithfulness in small things is seen and cherished by God. The tradition of burying a statue of Saint Joseph to help sell a home, while sometimes viewed as superstition, reflects a deeper faith in his intercession, that he will, even now, guide us through times of change with the same care and protection he once offered his family. Joseph's legacy challenges us to reconsider what it means to lead and to serve. In a world that often glorifies outward success and visibility, Joseph reminds us that true leadership is found in humble service. As the head of the Holy Family, he protected, provided, and guided, not through power, but through love and devotion. His life teaches us that God often chooses the humble and the meek to fulfill his greatest plans, showing us that greatness in God's kingdom is found in the willingness to serve others quietly and faithfully. Saint Joseph's leadership was not driven by ambition, but by a heart fully surrendered to God, a powerful example for anyone seeking to lead with integrity. Today, the Catholic Church honors Saint Joseph as the patron of the universal church, a protector of all believers. His role extends far beyond his earthly life, embracing every corner of the world where Christians gather, pray, and seek his intercession. Saint Joseph stands as a bridge between human frailty and divine strength, reminding us that God's will is often fulfilled through those who simply say yes to his call. In times of doubt, fear, or insecurity, his life encourages us to look beyond our own limitations and trust that God's plan is at work, even when we cannot see the full picture. As we prepare to reflect on our next saint, Saint Mary the Virgin, let us carry with us the quiet strength and humility of Saint Joseph. In a world that often values noise and visibility, Saint Joseph teaches us the profound power of silent faith, unwavering obedience, and love in action. May his life inspire us to find holiness in the humble, to serve without seeking recognition, and to trust that God is present in every small act of faithful service. Saint Mary the Virgin, the Mother of Jesus, holds a place unlike any other in the heart of Catholic devotion and the broader Christian faith. Her life is woven throughout the Gospels, giving us glimpses of a woman whose faith, courage, and humility laid the foundation for anyone seeking to follow God. More than just a historical figure, Mary embodies grace, chosen by God to bring his Son into the world, a role of such profound importance that it required extraordinary trust and obedience. Her story is both tender and powerful, showing us that holiness can be lived with quiet strength and unwavering faith. For Catholics, Mary is not only the Mother of God, but also a spiritual mother, whose life and intercession draw us closer to her Son. The angel Gabriel's visit to Mary in Nazareth marked the beginning of a journey that would change history. Imagine the depth of faith required in that moment. A young woman, likely in her teens, being told that she would bear the Son of God. Gabriel's greeting, "Hail, full of grace, the Lord is with thee," affirmed her unique role in God's divine plan. Despite the uncertainty, Mary responded with a simple yet powerful yes. "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word." Luke 1 verse 38. This acceptance, known as her fiat, is at the heart of discipleship, a complete surrender to God's will, even when the future is unknown. Mary's yes came with a cost. Her willingness to bear the Christ child exposed her to judgment, potential rejection, and the trials of motherhood. Yet she held her faith firmly, trusting that God's purpose would prevail. In this way, Mary teaches us that following God often requires courage and trust, especially when the world doesn't understand our path. Her unwavering faith serves as an invitation for us to place our lives in God's hands, to say yes to the unknown, and to embrace our roles with the same humility and strength she showed. Throughout Jesus' life, Mary was a constant presence, a witness to his miracles, his teachings, and even his suffering. At the wedding at Cana, when the wine ran out, it was Mary who gently pointed out the need to her son, setting the stage for his first miracle. Her words to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you," John 2 verse 5, echo through time as advice for all of us. Mary's deep understanding of her son's mission highlights her role as both his mother and his first disciple. She trusted that he would provide, even if she didn't fully understand how, a trust that calls us to follow her example in our own lives. But Mary's faith was most profoundly tested at the foot of the cross. Standing there, she witnessed her son suffering in death, fulfilling Simeon's prophecy that a sword will pierce your soul also. Luke 2 verse 35. Her grief in that moment is beyond imagination. Yet her strength in bearing it without bitterness or despair speaks to a love that transcends understanding. Mary's presence at the cross shows us that faith does not shield us from suffering, but sustains us through it. Her silent endurance is a testament to the power of love and faith, even in the darkest moments. A reminder that, like her, we are called to remain faithful even in times of great loss and sorrow. For Catholics, Mary is not merely a historical figure, but a living presence, an intercessor who understands the human heart intimately. Her role as a mother did not end at Calvary. Rather, it expanded to include all of humanity. When Jesus, from the cross, entrusted her to the Apostle John with the words, "Behold your mother," he gave her to all of us. Mary's maternal love is an embrace that reaches us time, offering comfort, guidance, and a path back to her son. She is the gentle hand that leads us to Christ, understanding our weaknesses, fears, and hopes, and lifting them up in her prayers. For countless Catholics, the Rosary, a prayer deeply centered on Mary, is a source of peace, a way to meditate on Christ's life through her eyes, drawing closer to both mother and son. Devotion to Mary is a deeply personal experience for many, resonating with those who seek her gentle guidance and protection. Her titles reflect the many facets of her love and intercession. Queen of Heaven, Mother of Mercy, Star of the Sea, each title capturing a unique aspect of her care for humanity. Many Catholics turn to Mary in times of need, trusting in the power of her prayers. This faith in her intercession stems from the belief that Mary, as the mother of Jesus, holds a unique place in his heart and possesses a deep compassion for his followers. Through her, we find a mother's love, a friend's support, and a guide's wisdom, reminding us that we are never alone on our journey of faith. Mary's life is a tapestry of love, courage, and faith, an example for everyone who seeks to follow Christ. She shows us that holiness isn't a distant, unattainable ideal, but a living reality, one rooted in our daily choices, our relationships, and our willingness to trust God. Mary's faithfulness, from the Annunciation to Calvary, reveals that a life given to God is not free from trials, but is filled with purpose and grace. Her story challenges us to live with the same openness to God's will, trusting that his plan, though often mysterious, ultimately leads to fullness of life. As we move on to reflect on our next saint, Saint Francis of Assisi, let us carry Mary's example of humility and devotion in our hearts. Through her, we see that true strength lies in surrender, that love is most powerful when it serves, and that faith endures even in silence and suffering. Mary's quiet but unwavering yes to God reminds us that holiness often lives in the ordinary and humble moments of our lives, and her life continues to guide us closer to her Son. Saint Francis of Assisi is one of the most revered and beloved saints in the Catholic faith, known not only for his profound spirituality, but also for his incredible compassion for all of God's creation. Born into a life of wealth and privilege, Francis enjoyed a carefree youth. But everything changed when he had a profound encounter with God that turned his heart toward a different path. Renouncing his inheritance, he chose a life of radical poverty and simplicity, dedicating himself to serving others and embracing the beauty of God's world. His life stands as a powerful testament to the idea that true joy comes from letting go, from giving everything up for love, love of God, love of people, and love for the earth itself. Francis reminds us that to truly follow Christ, we must be willing to surrender everything and live in harmony with creation, recognizing God's presence in every living thing. The story of Francis's conversion is one of the most inspiring tales in Christian history. One day, while he was praying in the crumbling church of San Damiano, he heard Christ speak to him from the crucifix. "Francis, rebuild my church, which, as you can see, is falling into ruin." At first, Francis took this command literally, setting to work repairing the old building with his own hands. But as his faith deepened, he realized that Christ was calling him to rebuild the church in a much broader sense. Not with stones, but through his life and example. This became his mission: to renew faith by embodying simplicity, humility, and service, showing others what it meant to truly live out the teachings of Christ. Francis's love for poverty was absolute. In an age when the church was often associated with wealth and power, Francis stood as a reminder of Jesus' teachings on humility and detachment. He gave up every material possession, choosing to live as a poor man, relying entirely on God's providence. To many, his choices seemed extreme, even reckless. But Francis believed that true freedom came from poverty, for it stripped away everything that separated him from God. His life invites us to question what we need and challenges us to consider how our attachments might be keeping us from a closer relationship with God and with each other. One of the most beautiful aspects of Francis's life was his deep respect for all creatures, whom he called his brothers and sisters in creation. His famous Canticle of the Sun reflects this profound connection to the natural world, as he praises God for brother sun, sister moon, brother fire, and sister water. Francis saw the divine in everything around him, from the smallest bird to the tallest tree, believing that all of creation was a reflection of God's beauty. This kinship with nature wasn't just sentimental, it was central to his spirituality. For Francis, harming the earth was like wounding one's relationship with God. His teachings on creation were radical for his time and are perhaps even more relevant today, as we face the urgent need to care for our environment. Francis's compassion extended to the poor and the marginalized. He sought out those whom society had cast aside, embracing lepers, feeding the hungry, and comforting the sick. One of the pivotal moments in his spiritual journey was his embrace of a leper, which symbolized his commitment to see Christ in the suffering. In a world where the poor were often ignored, Francis chose to live among them, offering not only food and clothing, but dignity and love. For him, poverty was a means of drawing closer to God and serving humanity, a conviction that led to the founding of the Franciscan order, which continues his mission of charity and humility to this day. Francis's commitment to peace went beyond his own community. He's famously remembered for his attempt to bring peace during the Crusades when he traveled to Egypt to meet with Sultan al-Kamil, hoping to foster understanding between Christians and Muslims. Although he didn't succeed in stopping the conflict, his courage and openness to dialogue set a powerful example of peacemaking that was rare for his time. Francis's life reminds us that true discipleship calls us to love even those who are different from us, to be instruments of peace in a divided world. His well-known prayer, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace," reflects his longing for reconciliation and remains a guiding light for all who strive to build bridges of understanding. For Francis, following Christ also meant embracing suffering. In the later years of his life, he received the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, on his hands, feet, and side. This mysterious and painful sign was seen as a mark of his deep union with Jesus, a physical manifestation of his love and willingness to suffer for God's sake. Yet Francis didn't focus on his suffering. Instead, he called it perfect joy when he could endure hardships for God. His joyful acceptance of suffering teaches us that when we are united with Christ, even our pain can become a form of love, a way to grow closer to God's grace. Today, St. Francis's legacy lives on not only in the Franciscan order, but in the hearts of all who seek a simple, compassionate, and faithful life. He challenges us to live with humility, to care for the earth, and to see God in the faces of the poor. His life was a radical expression of the gospel, a call to live simply, love deeply, and walk humbly with God. In an age where materialism and individualism can pull us away from faith, Francis's life shines as a beacon, reminding us of what it truly means to follow Christ. He invites us to see the divine in the ordinary, to cherish every living thing, and to give of ourselves freely and without reservation. As we prepare to reflect on our next saint, St. Thomas Aquinas, let us hold on to the lessons of St. Francis. In Francis, we see the gospel come to life in its most vibrant colors, a life poured out for love, for peace, and for all of God's creation. His example reminds us that holiness isn't found in grand gestures, but in simple, joyful acts of love and service. May his life inspire us to seek God in the humble, to serve others with compassion, and to find joy in every moment we dedicate to God. St. Thomas Aquinas, one of the most revered thinkers in Catholic theology and philosophy, stands as a towering figure whose work continues to shape Christian thought even centuries after his death. Known as the angelic doctor for the clarity and purity of his intellect, Thomas devoted his life to understanding and articulating the mysteries of God. For him, the pursuit of truth wasn't just an academic exercise. It was a deeply spiritual endeavor, a way to bring human reason into harmony with divine revelation. Thomas saw the search for knowledge as an act of worship, a means of drawing closer to God by understanding his creation. His life and teachings remind us that faith and reason aren't opposing forces but two paths leading to the same truth, the reality of God's existence and his love for humanity. Born into a noble family in Italy, Thomas was expected to follow a traditional path of wealth and influence, but he felt a call to religious life that took him down a different road. Against his family's wishes, he joined the Dominican order, choosing a life of poverty, study, and service. His family even went so far as to imprison him in an attempt to dissuade him, but Thomas remained steadfast. This early sacrifice reveals the depth of his commitment to God's will above all else. Thomas's decision to prioritize his spiritual calling over worldly success is a powerful reminder that true fulfillment comes from following God's plan, not from the fleeting rewards of social status or material wealth. One of Thomas's most significant contributions to the Church is his monumental work, the Summa Theologica, an ambitious and comprehensive exploration of theology and philosophy. In it, he examines questions about God, morality, and the nature of human life, with a rigor that's both intellectual and accessible, aiming to make profound ideas understandable to anyone who seeks them. The Summa represents Thomas's lifelong mission to synthesize faith and reason, to show that both are essential in knowing God. For him, the mysteries of faith weren't just to be accepted blindly, but were treasures to be explored and understood more deeply. His work is an invitation to question, to think critically, and to trust that our intellect, when guided by faith, can lead us closer to divine wisdom. One of the central pillars of Thomas's thought is his proof for the existence of God, famously known as the Five Ways. These arguments examine the natural world and show how everything ultimately points back to a creator. For Thomas, faith and reason converged on this foundational truth. God is the ultimate cause, the unmovable mover, the necessary being upon which everything depends. His arguments weren't meant to replace faith, but to strengthen it, providing a philosophical foundation for belief in God's existence. Even today, his 5 ways continue to be studied and respected, not just by theologians, but by philosophers of all kinds, as they offer a powerful framework for understanding the divine through human reason. Despite his towering intellect, Thomas's brilliance was always balanced by profound humility. Though he achieved great insights, he famously referred to his writings as mere straw compared to the true knowledge of God. Near the end of his life, after a mystical experience that he never fully explained, Thomas stopped writing altogether, saying that what he had seen made all his work seem insignificant. This humility is one of the most striking aspects of Thomas's character. Despite all he accomplished, he understood that human knowledge has limits, and that God's mystery is beyond even the most brilliant minds. His humility challenges us to remember that our understanding, no matter how great, is always a gift from God and should be used in service to him and others. St. Thomas's devotion extended far beyond scholarly pursuits. He was known for his deep life of prayer, which he saw as the foundation of his work. Every insight, every theological argument, he viewed as a grace received through prayer. His writings reveal a heart not only intellectually brilliant, but also profoundly in love with God. For Thomas, theology wasn't just an academic discipline. It was a personal encounter with God's mystery. This blend of head and heart reminds us that faith is both something to understand and something to feel deeply, a relationship that grows through both study and prayer. Thomas's life invites us to approach our faith with curiosity and reverence, seeing each question as a step closer to God. Thomas's love for the Eucharist was especially profound, evident in the beautiful hymns he composed, like the Tantum Ergo and O Salutaris Hostia, which are still sung in Catholic liturgies today. These hymns express his reverence for Christ's presence in the Eucharist, a mystery he saw as the source and summit of Christian life. In these hymns, we glimpse a side of Thomas that goes beyond intellect, revealing a soul captivated by the love of God made tangible in the sacrament. His words offer a timeless reminder that the Eucharist isn't just a ritual but an encounter with the divine, a gift that nourishes our souls and draws us closer to God. His devotion to the Eucharist invites us to approach it with the same awe and love, recognizing Christ's real presence among us. The legacy of St. Thomas endures because he understood that the ultimate purpose of knowledge is to lead us to God. His life was a journey of seeking and sharing wisdom, a commitment to bringing others closer to the truth of God's love. Even today, scholars, theologians, and everyday Catholics turn to his works for insight, finding in his writings a bridge between faith and reason. In a world that often separates science and spirituality, Thomas reminds us that they're not opposites but complements. His life encourages us to see our intellect as a gift from God, a tool for exploring his creation, and a path to deeper faith. Thomas's legacy challenges us to seek truth in all things, trusting that each discovery and insight brings us closer to the Creator. As we turn our attention to the next saint, St. Peter, let us carry with us the wisdom and humility of St. Thomas Aquinas. His life reminds us that faith is a journey of the mind as well as the heart, that God invites us to seek understanding even as we embrace mystery. May his example inspire us to pursue truth with dedication, to approach God with both humility and awe, and to see every question as an invitation to grow in our relationship with him. St. Peter, one of Jesus' 12 apostles, was a fisherman called to become the rock upon which the church would be built. His story is one of transformation, humility, and fierce devotion, a journey that mirrors our own struggles to understand, follow, and stay faithful to God's will. Known first as Simon, he was given the name Peter by Christ, a name meaning rock, symbolizing the strength and stability he would eventually bring to the church. But Peter's path to this role was anything but smooth. It was filled with questions, moments of doubt, and stumbles that, in many ways, make him one of the most relatable figures in the Gospels. Through Peter, we see that faith is a process, one that requires us to fall and rise again, each time drawing a little closer to God. From his first encounter with Jesus, Peter was captivated, leaving behind his fishing nets and livelihood to follow a man he believed to be the Messiah. His decision was immediate, driven by a heart that recognized something profoundly divine in Jesus. Peter's boldness, his impulsive nature, and his deep love for Christ set him apart as someone willing to risk everything for his faith. Yet, his story is also marked by misunderstanding and confusion, showing us that even the most passionate believers can struggle to fully grasp God's plan. Like all of us, Peter's faith was tested repeatedly, but he persevered, each test strengthening his conviction and refining his soul. One of the defining moments in Peter's journey came when Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" While others hesitated, Peter answered with conviction, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Matthew 16, verse 16. In this moment, Peter's faith was affirmed, and Jesus entrusted him with a sacred mission, declaring, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." Matthew 16:18. This was both a blessing and a responsibility, one that would require Peter to lay down his life in service to God's people. Yet, despite this divine calling, Peter's path was far from perfect. His struggles with fear and doubt continued, revealing a faith that was as vulnerable as it was devoted. Perhaps the most poignant moment in Peter's story comes on the night of Jesus' arrest. Filled with fear, Peter denied knowing Christ 3 times, just as Jesus had predicted. In that instant, Peter's courage crumbled, his humanity laid bare in a moment of weakness. Yet this act of denial did not define him. Rather, it became a moment of profound humility, a turning point that would deepen his faith. When Peter heard the rooster crow, he remembered Jesus' words and wept bitterly. Luke 22:62. His tears were not just a sign of regret, but a testament to his love for Christ, a love that, despite his failure, would ultimately drive him to rise again, stronger and more committed than ever. After Jesus' resurrection, Peter was given a chance to redeem himself in a deeply moving encounter on the shores of Galilee. 3 times Jesus asked him, "Do you love me?" And 3 times Peter affirmed his love, each response healing the wounds of his earlier denial. Jesus' final command, "Feed my sheep," sealed Peter's calling as the shepherd of his people, a mission that Peter would fulfill with unwavering dedication. This moment of reconciliation and renewal is one of the most powerful in the Gospels, a reminder that God's mercy is boundless and that He never gives up on us, no matter how many times we fall. Peter's restoration by Christ is a profound message of forgiveness, showing us that our failures do not define us. Rather, it's our willingness to return to God with open hearts that matters most. Following Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit descended upon the apostles, Peter emerged as a fearless leader of the early church. His transformation was complete. The once hesitant disciple became a bold preacher, proclaiming the gospel with a courage that astonished even his adversaries. In the face of persecution, Peter never wavered, even when threatened with imprisonment and death. He was no longer the man who denied Christ out of fear. He had become a rock, a steadfast leader whose faith could not be shaken. His words in the Acts of the Apostles reveal a soul filled with the Holy Spirit, a man who knew that his life was no longer his own, but was given fully to Christ and his mission. St. Peter's leadership was marked by humility and a deep understanding of human frailty. He knew what it was like to doubt, to falter, and to be forgiven. This empathy made him a compassionate shepherd, someone who could guide others with gentleness and wisdom. His letters to the early Christian communities reflect his love for the church, his encouragement to stay faithful amidst suffering, and his hope that all believers would grow in grace. Peter's words continue to resonate, reminding us that our faith is not about being perfect, but about striving, growing, and trusting in God's mercy. Peter's journey ultimately led him to Rome, where he faced martyrdom with the same faith that had carried him from the shores of Galilee. Tradition holds that he was crucified upside down, a final act of humility in which he sought to honor Christ even in death. His martyrdom was not a defeat, but a triumph, a testament to a life transformed by love and grace. St. Peter's legacy as the first pope and foundation of the Church is a cornerstone of Catholic faith. His life stands as a witness to the power of God to change, redeem, and strengthen even the most flawed among us. As we move on to reflect on our next saint, St. Joan of Arc, let us carry with us the lessons of St. Peter's life. In him we see the beauty of a heart that never stopped seeking God, a spirit that found strength in weakness, and a soul that rose each time it fell. Peter's journey reminds us that faith is a pilgrimage, one that calls us to trust, to persevere, and to love with all that we are. May his example inspire us to become rocks of faith in our own lives, trusting that God's grace will guide us through every trial. St. Joan of Arc, one of history's most extraordinary and courageous saints, was a young woman of remarkable faith and conviction. Her life speaks to the power of a divine calling and the courage to follow it, no matter the personal cost. Born into a humble peasant family in 15th century France, Joan's early years were unremarkable, spent in the quiet rhythms of rural life and steeped in a simple but profound faith. Then, at the age of 13, she began to hear voices that she believed came from saints and angels, calling her to an impossible mission: to lead France to victory over its enemies and to see Charles II crowned as king. Joan's life shows us that God can choose anyone, no matter how humble or unlikely, to accomplish his purposes. In a time of turmoil, with France torn apart by the 100 Years' War and its people demoralized, Joan's mission was both radical and dangerous. She approached her calling with unwavering faith, believing that God had chosen her for this task. She faced enormous obstacles. Not only was she a young woman in a society where women held little power or voice, but she was also asking a fractured, war-weary country to believe in her vision and trust in God's guidance. Her story challenges us to ask ourselves if we would have the same boldness and trust in God's plan, even when it defies logic or expectation. When Joan appeared at the court of Charles VII, she had to convince not only the future king but also his advisors and military leaders, men who had every reason to doubt a young peasant girl. Yet her sincerity, confidence, and unshakable faith broke through their skepticism. After securing an audience, Joan's mission received what seemed like a miracle. Charles was persuaded by her words, moved by the sense of divine favor she carried. Joan donned armor, took up a sword, and led her troops with a conviction that came not from training or experience, but from her deep reliance on God. Her leadership was both military and spiritual, a blend of courage and humility that inspired those who followed her into battle. Joan's victories on the battlefield were nothing short of miraculous. She led her troops to several crucial victories, most notably at the Siege of Orléans, a turning point that shifted the course of the war and brought renewed hope to the French people. On the battlefield, she wasn't just a commander, but a symbol of divine favor, a reminder to her soldiers that they were fighting for a holy cause. Joan's courage in the face of danger and her unshakable faith in God's guidance inspired everyone around her. Her life reveals a timeless truth: that faith can empower us to achieve things beyond human strength, that trust in God can carry us through challenges we never thought we could face. Yet, Joan's journey was also one of profound suffering. Despite her loyalty and service, she was eventually betrayed, captured by the English, and put on trial for heresy. This trial was cruel and grueling, aimed not at seeking truth, but at breaking her spirit and discrediting her mission. The charges against her ranged from wearing men's clothing to accusations of witchcraft and heresy. But Joan's faith never wavered. Throughout the brutal trial, she held fast to her beliefs, refusing to renounce the voices that had guided her. Her responses to her accusers revealed wisdom and courage beyond her years, as she stood firm in her convictions, even in the face of death. In the end, Joan was condemned and sentenced to die by burning. At just 19 years old, she faced her fate with the same strength and faith that had defined her life. Witnesses described her as calm and composed, her gaze fixed on heaven, even as the flames rose around her. Her last words were a cry for Jesus, a final testament to her unwavering faith in the God who had called her. Joan's death was tragic, yet her martyrdom became a beacon of inspiration for generations to come. In her willingness to lay down her life for what she believed was God's mission, Joan shows us the ultimate expression of faith, a faith that transcends even death. Saint Joan of Arc's legacy endures not only as a national hero of France, but as a saint who embodies the power of conviction and courage in following God's call. Her life invites us to reflect on our own callings, to ask ourselves if we are willing to follow God with the same fidelity and trust. Joan's story teaches us that faith often demands sacrifice, that true discipleship may lead us down difficult paths, yet God's presence and purpose remain with us through every trial. Her courage speaks to anyone who feels small or unworthy, a reminder that God can work through each of us in ways we cannot imagine. For many, Joan of Arc is more than just a historical figure. She is an intercessor who understands the struggle of staying true to one's calling in a world that often doesn't understand it. Her life resonates with those who feel marginalized or misunderstood, offering hope that God's purpose transcends human judgment. Joan's story speaks to all who want to live out their faith boldly, without fear of what others might say. She reminds us that God calls us not to blend in, but to stand out, to be fearless witnesses to His love and power, regardless of the cost. As we conclude this journey through the lives of these 10 extraordinary saints, may Saint Joan of Arc's courage inspire us to live our own lives with conviction and trust in God's plan. In Joan, we see that faith is often a battle that requires us to overcome not only external obstacles but our own doubts and fears. Her example encourages us to follow our faith wherever it may lead, trusting that God will be with us every step of the way. And as we carry the stories of these saints in our hearts, let us remember that we too are called to live lives of faith, courage, and compassion, guided by the same God who led them to greatness. If this video helped you understand more about these saints, please share it with others. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications for more videos like this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, take care.